Okay. Yes, this is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. We have with us KaRi Nielsen. She is going to discuss with us the state of the United States Postal Service. KaRi, first of all, could you tell us your position in the United States Postal Service and even your past positions? Give us a little history about yourself.
Oops, I'm sorry. So first of all, thank you for having me on. My nickname is KaRi. Right away, the name Karen turns people off, and I hear that from our customers. I actually answer the phones at 1-800-ASK-USPS.com. That is the national call center. That's 1-800-275-8777. So before that, I started at the post office. Well, let me tell you, I'm originally from New York and New Jersey, moved out to Southern California, the Western region, started out as a mail clerk in the private sector, became human resources. I even worked in the state of Hawaii for the state back when the ADA law came through. I think that was 99. I even created the state safety program. So actually, I'm realizing that I'm coming full circle. So I was the mail clerk in the private sector and then became human resources manager. So I'm familiar with benefits, 401ks. I used to give open enrollments regarding that. And that's a major concern for every employee at the post office. What's going to happen with the retirement? But I am concerned today about I believe Postmaster General has created a hostile work environment. And these carriers, I started off as a carrier. I took my test in Hawaii, and then I retook it years later in California. And I was hoping I put down Seal Beach or Beverly Hills. I wanted to work at those two places, and it was taking forever. So I changed it to working anywhere. And I actually I started out in Seal Beach as what's called a part-time flexible. And when you start with the government in a craft position, hourly position, you're basically at their beck and call. And they just need to give you, my mind is still in the private sector. I don't even know, I belong to two unions, National Association of Letter Carriers. I still pay dues there because the people in union members really help each other. They ask a question after work in the Facebook work group and just answers like that. Same thing with APWU. You know, I'm with the clerk union as well. And so I do support the unions. They are there. If I want to contact them about this matter, I haven't. It's hard to talk about when I think about these phone calls that I'm getting at the call center.
What about in your Facebook group? Your concerns are they shared by other people in the Facebook group?
So I belong to the Facebook groups, and I hear from the inside out of people, spouses of people that commit suicide, men that are emasculated by management in the post office and in the government. It's hard to get rid of the bad apples. So there's something called the Peter Principle. There's a book about it. I don't know. I'm talking off my head because I just found out more information as I'm zooming in North Carolina. I just found out that both Postmaster DeJoy has an FBI investigation in his background, and so do his wife. His wife, the FBI was looking into her, and I just saw her 10-minute video last night about transparency, and it turned out she hired her friends and hired people from the church, and Louis DeJoy brought in 23 executives. And anyway, you asked me about
what's the name of Louis DeJoy's wife?
So her name is Aldona, Aldona, and last name is WOS, like Sam, Aldona Voss. And she is the president of the Institute of World Politics, where the postmaster just spoke, but it's in secret. I just, I'm on my own sick leave here as of April 15th, using my own resources to just work on this 16 hours a day while I'm on sick leave. I'm getting paid for 8. I'm losing overtime, which overtime is any business's enemy. But the way he is working on this, he's been embedded, infiltrated his friends throughout the post office through contracts. Oh, please look up Dominic, DOMINICK versus Louis DeJoy to see how he does business. He tricked his own brother out of the family business. So he is creating a hostile work environment for these, especially for these letter carriers.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the previous state of the USPS, how it was, any problems that it had in the past, and then later we'll jump into what the current state of the USPS is and when it started.
Okay, so when I first started, we heard decades ago that there were going to be changes to come. But remember, he has been involved, his previous company, New Breed, which they were investigating, I guess, the New Breed employees, or maybe it was XPO Logistics that bought New Breed, but there was a bonus for all the employees that donated to a certain political party. And so basically, P&G DeJoy got Trump into government, into the position of president, and which he can again. I mean, there's also a video on how the DeJoy spent so much time on that. And in the middle, he's making all these changes that the 10-year plan, remember when he came on board, June, he was sworn in, I think it was June 15th, 2020. There was no plan, right? Well, in 2016, when Trump called the post office a joke, he said, I have a plan. That's what Steve Mnuchin, who was in charge of finances, recalled him saying. And there's a whole other backstory to that. If anybody's in banking, when Dominic versus Louis DeJoy, Dominic put out a book, and I bought the book off of Amazon, and he mentions a banking term, Glass-Steagall recession. So is that what made New Breed, all of this money? The statistics at the post office versus how much Louis DeJoy's worth is, I believe he's past the billionaire list. He's just very limited information on this man. He's very secret.
Yeah, let's update the listeners about the Dominic versus Louis DeJoy. Evidently, at the end, both parties settled, and both parties agreed not to reveal the details of the settlement. But everything else, let's because just continue on with the state of the U.S. Post Office, Postal Service, and how was it before? What was it before? What was good and bad about it? And then why did Trump say that it was a joke? Was it really a joke, or was it something that he just called the workplace a joke? What was this all about?
Well, in our great grandparents' day, a letter we get from point A to point B in 3 days. Mm-hmm. And we were doing fine with packages, 5 days, first class packages. Mm-hmm. For some reason, he's coining the term eagle, even his newspaper, his internal or employee and stakeholder magazine is called the Eagle. Someone called in once saying that he drove our Express. The name of his trucking company was Eagle, which I found interesting. But the scholarships that he gives to that he and his wife have over there at the Institute of World Politics is called Eagle. But yet when he spoke at, I believe it was Duke University, he said, I don't have any planes. meaning I or we, LDJ Global Strategies. It's a mystery. So I'm sorry, I keep coming
Yeah,
back
but
to
yeah,
him,
that's
but
we have to keep on track about the state of the affairs, because the backstory is there's too much detail and we don't want to confuse
okay.
our listeners. Let's start at the beginning and state what the previous state of the USPS was, and then how Louis DeJoy changed that, and then we could get into details of how that came about.
Well, he changed it by, I'm sorry. Louis DeJoy changed it by putting his plan in action.
Mhm,
So he had a plan. I mentioned 2016.
mhm.
Prior to that, there was a 5-year plan in 2015 signed off. It was called Delivering for America in 2015.
Mhm.
So there was a plan.
So that was the previous Postmaster General?
That was under, yes, Megan Brennan.
Okay. And then in 2016, there was a new plan, and then who was responsible for the new plan?
Well, when he came on board in 2020, may I take a break?
Sure.
I need to. All right. How do you put me on break? I need to take some water. Okay. So this section, back when you're a carrier, you get trained. You take the sanctity of the mail, and you perform the work.
Okay. Are we better? Are we
This is
better now?
pre-CCA.
Okay. Okay. Are you ready to resume?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I wasn't on. Okay. Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So we were discussing about in 2016. Was there a plan in 2016 that was different from the plan in 2015?
No, there was 2015 that was signed off by Robert Mike Duncan, and he's one of the people that suggested Postmaster General Louis DeJoy come aboard. I believe he's been trying to get in through, get this whole thing, the plant consolidation and everything. If you go to Save the Post Office, there's there's someone that's not postal related at all. His name is Steve, Steve Hutkins, Hutkins. And he has documented, along with, there's an employee who's worked at the post office as long as I have, almost 29 years. And he also, I don't know if I'm supposed to say his name, JS, Jeffrey S. But he also runs a Facebook page, Save Our Post Office. Actually, you could find that under FIRE, PMG, which stands for Postmaster General, which I'm finding out even government employees don't know what PMG means, but PMG DeJoy, FIRE PMG DeJoy. And he's been keeping that up. I mean, they've been documenting all this for years, 2011. So when I was a carrier, things in great grandma's age, 3 days from point A to point B. From, I'm originally from New York, people in California, they get it in their hands.
Mhm.
So we saw the writing on the wall back then, and for years we would hear, oh, they're gonna, make these big changes. So keep in mind, DeJoy and New Breed and, all these other companies we still don't know all the names of, because when oversight asked about which companies are you invested in, like Lockheed Martin, that's, doing all this scanning and sensors and tracking and everything. He's been invested in that, and he didn't list LDJ Global Strategies on there, and he's got presence. Everybody thinks he's Trump's puppet, but I believe it's more like the other way. But so the carriers saw it, and every year it's like, oh, yeah. We hear this all the time. When is it going to happen? So DeJoy gets in place June 15th, 2020. Now, my whole issue, you may have heard about the postal inspection, taking the Postal Police off of patrol.
Mhm.
Now, there is a man out there, a postal police. He's with an association, Frank Albergo, A-L-B like boy, E-R-G-O. So during my course of employment, I would come across these websites. Steve Hutkins started his, I believe in 2000. Oh, it was actually yesterday. It was 12 years ago that SaveThePostOffice.com has been around. And there's a lot of really good Facebook groups that releases information. We even have a private one in Long Beach. They leveled our GMF in Long Beach. And so now it's Signal Hill is now the main, well, Signal Hill is where the post office, the unit, I went from being a part-time flexible carrier, I wanted to become regular. And they said in Seal Beach, it would take, people have waited for like 7 years. So then I went to the special delivery department. And so we were working, we had an hour fluctuation. We were working as carriers. What we did was deliver express, and it was always on time. It was rare that there would be a late.
And when you mentioned earlier that RGS was leveled, you mean one of the post offices was demolished, right?
Yeah, it's the General Mail facility in Long Beach, zip code 90809.
Mm-hmm.
The PO boxes and everything still have that zip code, but they moved it to where the credit union was. And that's been a few years. I was in special delivery. I became a regular over there. We were working 30 hours a week. Then it got cut to 20 hours a week. Then it picked up at 30 again. I believe I'm the first carrier that ever started going to other offices. Can I work here? You guys have my express. This is the common sense in the post office. All of us able-bodied would get express letters to deliver. I had 3 zip codes to deliver in, 90803, and so where the mansions are to where the shacks are, mansions to shacks. So it's, and I actually over 10 years ago reported a missing master key from 90804, 90814. I was told they take like a year to come in. I had called all of the post offices in Long Beach when I went to empty 5 collection boxes at 5150 PCH. They were all empty, and usually they're like overflowing after a 3-day weekend. So
okay, let's get a bit. I think you might be confusing our listeners. So in 2016, there was actually nothing wrong with the post office. Everything was delivered on time. So whatever anyone said that there was something wrong with the post office and it had to change. In other words, you're saying there was absolutely nothing wrong with the post office in the previous state of the USPS, right?
well, I can't say nothing. There's
But
always been
deliveries
missing.
were on time. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been missing packages, or sometimes vehicles would catch on fire, or, various things that would happen. There was, so PMG started in, he took the oath, I guess, June of 2020, June 15th. On August 2020, the Postal Police were taken off of patrol. At the same time, a public announcement about there's no master key plan in place, and that employees can order, there's no cap as to how many keys can be ordered. Now, this is very important because that was only just released August 2020. The timing of notifying criminals that there's a lot of competition out there has created this hostile work environment.
In other words, arrow keys. Those are the keys for the blue mailboxes on the sidewalks, right?
Yes.
And
And I started.
What about the keys for the apartments? Are those different? Does every apartment have its own key?
Well, they're all, the post office has master keys. So when you go into an apartment building, the master key may open a little lockbox, realtor uses on the outside of a house for sale. And they would use their master key for that. It would then take the other key out that opens the door. Once they get into the bank of those lockable mailboxes, yeah, that's the master key, the one that's smack in the middle at the top. And so if in the past they were stolen, they would just be duplicated. And so all these postmaster generals never said, okay, this zip code has been compromised. We're going to have to shut down the zip code and for the next few days, go to every single lockable mailbox and the collection keys. They're on the same key ring. So it's an arrow key and then the master key for the blue collection boxes. So when I started as emptying those blue collection boxes, we would find rat traps attached or a sticky mouse trap attached to belt buckles. So people would be fishing out the mail. That's since the beginning of those blue collection mailboxes.
Mm-hmm. So that was like pre-2015, pre-2016, right?
This was like when I started in 92, 93, yeah, we would find those. I found, people say, where's my mail? I found burnt firecrackers with burnt mail that you can't see where it was going, melted ice cream cones, underwear. There was a gun. It was an interesting situation. I guess my boss was called. The policeman said, oh, I put my gun in the blue collection box. So all different types of things are in there. So, and that is a hazard as well, then to wear gloves. Oh, I hated wearing gloves, but we have to go. So what Long Beach did was they put teeth. They added teeth. So if any rat trap attached to a belt buckle, if they were fishing it out, it would get stuck there.
Mm-hmm. When did that start?
And then you're touching all this.
Do you still remember when that started, when they put in the teeth? And are the teeth still there?
Well, I know that the teeth were put in there prior to 2013. That's just in Long Beach. Uh-huh. I don't know. And also nailing the opening shut. So you can only put a few letters in there at a time is what Long Beach did.
So it's a different policy throughout the nation. For instance, like putting in the teeth, that's not, they not put that throughout the US.
Good question. I thought it was nationwide, but talking to the customers that call in, and that's what led me to take this time off, because those 2 zip codes I reported as being compromised, a caller called in and said, I mailed my payment out from my outgoing mailbox in my apartment to a P.O. box and it got washed. So I want to insert a tip right here, because when I first started, I've been at the call center for almost 9 years, and the calls occasionally you would hear of something like that happening, the checks being washed. Now, the customer care center has turned into basically a mail and package and identity theft reporting agency. And so this is interesting too. I'm at the National Call Center. We're making reports about undelivered, non-delivered mail. But yet the Postmaster General is putting out that the performance is 2.5 average days, but it doesn't include non-delivered mail. So if you want to look up these 2 reports, I'm a Google girl. It's, the listeners, and I'm going to share this later after I add in my notes. Am I allowed to comment? Because sure. I want to put some resources and everything. So you asked about state of the USPS is my Facebook page. Mm-hmm. And I have a list of all of the safety issues that are happening with the carriers. The number one thing is you have to have you have to be so concentrated. But the fact that they're hearing that there's going to be layoffs and reduction in hours, people are feeling it in their paychecks. How do you perform your work if you're trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills? How do you even make phone calls while you're on the job? Your every move now. In Seal Beach, when I delivered regular mail, we were the last post office to get the DPS, where it comes automatically sorted. And that's because delivering in Leisure World was like following the trail of a rabbit. It's called a shoelace when you go back and forth. It's really hard to do. And so we were one of the last to get DPS in Seal Beach. I had no clue when I was in Seal Beach, all of this theft was happening. I didn't learn it until just recently, seeing in August 2020, basically, you know what they're stating? If those blue collection boxes have never been secure, they're basically saying every voting ballot put in any of those collection boxes were not secure. So you're hearing it right here. Someone's got to say it. So let's just fix the problem.
When you mentioned that the report, and I forgot what report it was, that stated that its delivery currently is 2.5 days, but that doesn't take into account the numbers of lost and misdelivered packages and letters. So is there anywhere that a person could get the numbers of misdelivered or lost mail?
Well, like I said, if you look up USPS OIG non-delivered, you're going to say there are no such statistics.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fudging federal financial records and misleading the public. That's the second reason that DeJoy should be removed.
Do you know that before he came in, were there reports about how many numbers of misdelivered or lost packages and letters before he came in?
They never had any tracking on it.
Mm-hmm.
The USPS OIG Office of Inspector General, they would take regional reports and look into certain post office, et cetera, but even those haven't been followed through on. So just today, before getting on here, the Postmaster DeJoy is blaming the PRC, and that's the Postal Regulatory Commission that basically they're all supposed to meet July 1st and put his increases into effect. But if you ask me, all of this reduction in mail and packages is due to DeJoy not doing anything about all this mail and theft. Now, I did look up under audit on September 22nd, 2022. OIG, USPS OIG, states they will now make a record of mail robberies and thefts.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, if you go onto YouTube and just put in carrier robbed, that's what I did. I just, and master key stolen, I was getting all these calls. And one of the last calls I got was somebody that had a check wash from the same two zip codes, one of the zip codes I reported over 10 years ago. Nothing has been done. And I blame all of the postmaster generals for that.
If they, what role did the Postal Police and the postal inspectors have in addressing these? If does that mean that if the Postmaster General doesn't direct the Postal Police to address these problems, then they don't get addressed, or is that part of their duties to address these problems and they didn't do it?
Well, on May 17th, well, first of all, there was on May 9th, 2023, there was the Board of Governors meeting. The Board of Governors are the only people that can get rid of the Postmaster General. The president can't do it. And Board of Governor Ron Stroman saw the Move On petition. There's one of 8 petitions to get rid of DeJoy. And he saw the one for Move on April 24th. That wasn't brought up. Now, on May 12th, USPS did put out a security announcement. It starts off with numbers. You can look it up on all the, they mentioned robberies just this year, the increase. And I don't know what they're comparing it to, if they were keeping a record until September 2022. But they mentioned that carriers are being robbed. It starts off with that. And at the end of their security update, it doesn't mention the informed delivery breach, which is probably the post office or the country's biggest breach, because once you sign up for informed delivery and you move out and don't let the post office know, there are some people that have been getting their informed deliveries on an address from 8 years ago, and they see everybody's mail who moves in, who moves out, because they never unsubscribe.
Mhm.
So what was the previous?
I think I was asking about when actually, this is a separate question. For the May 12th, 2023 meeting, I did look it up, and it seems as if I was not able to find what you were saying. So it seems as if they have that hidden from the public. Maybe I uh, clicked on the wrong link. If you could do us a favor later and send me
Yeah, I'll look for
send me
that.
the link. Send me the link, because I
Yeah.
tried Googling, like you said, and it said that everything is like closed. It's not not available to for the public or something, and kind of like that.
All right, may I have another break?
Sure.
All right, I'll be right back. All right. Um, okay, I'm gonna find
Okay.
this real quick.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just you don't have to find it now. All I need is for you to send me the link later, so we could add the link to the description for the interview. You don't need to
Okay.
now. Uh, but it is that you know, it seems as if it, you could check later, because I couldn't go get into there. I saw the meeting, the uh different meetings, and then some of them, when I clicked on it, nothing really popped.
On May 12th.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's USPS postal inspection. It's dated May 12th, 2023. It comes right
Right.
up there. USPS Postal Inspection Service rolls out expanded. Well, anyway, so it doesn't mention, oh, are we on? I'm sorry.
Yes, we are.
Oh,
That's okay. Okay. So what you were saying is that mail carrier safety is compromised because of that announcement about the key announcement. So where did that key announcement happen? Was it in one of these Board of Governors meetings? How did DeJoy send out that announcement that their key, that a lot of the key master keys were compromised, and there's nothing, that no key control and all that?
yeah, so the August 2020, where it said that there's no master key control in place. I don't know what got that going. I do know that the previous, the Office of Inspector General, the previous person in that position is now on board as operations. I believe he even left and then he came back. So that's same thing with Board of Governors Stroman. He left and then he came back. So Dave Williams is a previous Officer of Inspector General. Now the new one is Tammy. So when Tammy took over, I believe her last name is Whitcomb. So when she took over, maybe she is the one. I haven't asked her, and what I'm doing is I'm putting out what I'm finding, and I'm telling people how to find it, and I'm hoping the media looks into, especially the DeJoys and their, Institute of World Politics, because that just doesn't belong. So Let me see here. You were asking about the difference. The difference that I found answering those phone calls, like I said, I'm getting these stories of people that are so old, they don't even know another human being. Their letter carrier retired. They don't know their neighbors. I had this one, it was heartbreaking. She sent her mother a package from Amazon. It was stuck at the post office. And I knew from the previous call, because they come in regions, I knew that the master key was already stolen. And the caller actually said, you know, I used to work for the VA as a pharmacy assistant, and we used to joke, whoever had the key, the golden key, had the key to the city. And he said that was 40 years ago. And he said, yeah, our key's been compromised. So this lady calls in, she goes, my mother's 2,000 miles away, doesn't know. She'd have to hire a taxi to get to the post office. But the problem is, as I'm taking her report, I'm like, what's inside the package? Because her mother hadn't gotten her mail for 2 weeks. She said, well, it's the diapers she needs in order to rent a taxi to go to the post office and stand in line and ask about her important mail.
Mhm.
So, you know, I'm talking to people that are on their deathbed, people waiting for their psych meds, their
And these are
birth control pills.
and these are a lot of the rural customers that don't have many neighbors. It's their only contact with the world seems to be the postal carrier that brings what their mail to them, right?
Well, we also have a lot of disabled. A lot of our calls are elderly, disabled, rural. There are pockets across the United States where there is just perfect mail service. I don't have that list, but we can't really take notes from our phone calls. But I did mark down, you know, to get a post office with a 5-star rating, you would think, okay, let's use that as a model post office and do what they're doing right. But so yeah, the one thing with the post office is like McDonald's. It's consistent. You walk into the post office, everything is supposed to be the same at all post offices. So obviously there's inconsistency. Some, when I started getting phone calls last year about there's Gary, Indiana, and Las Vegas, Nevada. There's a zip code in each where the recipients would have to pick up their mail for over a year. I talked to a customer, he called in, he was a carrier in Las Vegas. He said, I said I was going to retire after I get jumped. I already got jumped after 3 times, you know, and he retired after the 4th.
So when they're jumped, they all the keys are stolen. The arrow key, if they're responsible for picking up a collection box mail from the collection boxes, and their apartment keys too, right? Or are the tests designated to different employees to pick up mail at collection boxes and to deliver mail?
No, every carrier that you see out there would have master keys on them. And some of them, yeah, they're robbed. They're told, don't struggle, just hand over what you have. And sometimes it's their own devices, their own, you know, they have a sick child at home, they're carrying their cell phone. And just imagine being a carrier, not even be able to contact what happened at home. I mean, sometimes they're even taking the vehicle, the satchel. There's no control on uniforms. I'm the first person, I'm proof of that, because I was such a perfectionist when I would case at the workstation, I would case the mail, and 4 letters later, I'd say, that doesn't feel right. And I'd go back, I'm like, oh yeah, it doesn't belong there. I was so slow that I didn't know if I was going to pass my 90 days. And they left me there.
In other words, you wanted to do everything right, and it took you a little longer to do everything right, to put mail in the correct place.
Yeah, I might have ADD. I got tested for it. They said, no, I don't have ADD, but you can tell my brain's in a blender right now. But
and another question as well. When you said that all carriers have the same set of keys, does that mean that the mail carriers, those that are not responsible for collecting mail from the collection boxes, even they have an arrow key? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, most carriers, if there's a rural route out there where they don't have any collection boxes and they don't have any, rural, it's really different. Even the pay is different because when you're a delivery person, you get paid hourly. The city carriers get paid hourly. What this rural payment schedule is, I don't even know if the Department of Labor ever even signed off on that. I mean, federally, they should be hourly, but they have this other pay plan in place where they would get paid basically by the route. And I'm not sure if packages are even counted in there. So I wanted to go back to the other thing that I was saying, because.
And one more thing before we uh, leave this subject. What about the carriers in the cities, such as we are in Chicago? With the carriers is there like a complete set of keys for even mail carriers that are not responsible for collection boxes? Do you mean that they on their key ring they even have an arrow key too for collection boxes? Is that what it is?
Yeah, city carriers would have the key that opens up all the lockable mailboxes, either, in a business center, high rise, apartment buildings. And they also have, I'm not sure exactly which routes have collection boxes on them anymore. I mean, they were the plan to take them out was a long time ago. And maybe that was because secretly the post office knew that they weren't safe, but it was never actually put in writing till August 2020. So maybe that's what I don't understand. Why, when Postmaster DeJoy was being, why are you taking these out? Why didn't he just say, because they're not safe? They never were. No election, no voting ballots in there. We can't say ever made it to the destination. So why didn't he just come out and say that? Instead, he's getting all of this flack. Is it because he just wanted it to continue? And then these carriers that get robbed, it's almost like it's a shakedown, saying that he's going to do this, cutting hours, cutting overtime, which, in the beginning, he was even going to cut it, remember, from 6 to 5 days. And he must have been like, well, the more money that we spend on overtime and delivering 6 days, the more money I can ask for. Now, what's odd is, what is the status, the balance sheet of the bailout or the what Congress passed? Where is all that money? No one's asking him that. No one's asking him for the actual formula of the straw donor formula. Did he share that at the Institute of World Politics? We don't know. It's secret.
So is there, have you seen where our listeners could actually FOIA for the USPS, the United States Postal Service spends on everything, what the budget is and all the expenditures? Is that available?
That's something I'm in the middle of research. I'm on my 5th. I thought I would only need 2 weeks to get him removed after finding where he spoke, but it's now going into 5.5 weeks. And I am researching everything. I'm just spending this weekend in North Carolina virtually, and I'm finding out, that's how I'm finding out even more information with his own state. His wife tried to reform Medicaid in the state of North Carolina. So, like I said, even retirees don't want DeJoy to have anything to do with. He doesn't even. He went to school for accounting, and his statistics are not correct. So, as far as the amount of the statistics on carriers robbed, master key stolen, Frank Albergo, I was going to read off of his LinkedIn, but I'm locked out of my LinkedIn. And it could be because they might not like my picture on there. So, but delivering for America.com, the number 4, that's a petition, one of the 8 petitions to remove him. If you'd like to sign and share that. And I'm sorry, first of all, this really is about the general public, right? I'm dressed like this basically to remind everyone that Postmaster DeJoy has been on board for 3 years. And only as of May 17th has he started listening to humans, including the Congress members. If you look at all of the short videos separately, you can see
You mean on your
women.
you mean on your YouTube channel,
No,
KaRi
I'm basically,
Prime Spot?
yeah.
The Prime Spot, is that the YouTube channel that you posted those
So if you
public
go to
meetings?
unemployeddejoy.com, that takes you to a YouTube channel I made by mistake, but I'm designating just to concentrate on that. I do have a YouTube where I'm dressed like this, and that's on unemployeddejoy.com. So I have my own personal YouTube, which is youtube.com/theprimespot,
Yeah, that's the
COM.
I think that's what the I did a little bit of research about somehow you were able to record some of the audio from the public meetings. Were those the Board of Governors meetings that you had in there?
So the Board of Governors meeting was May 9th, and I thought that Representative Connolly, and I also got a hold of Robert Garcia, he's a representative, used to be mayor of Long Beach, and I let them know about, DeJoy speaking at the Institute of World Politics. I thought Connolly was going to bring it up, but instead he was saying, I have to get back to my office. Our office workers were attacked by a man with a metal baseball bat who was asking for me. And he mentioned that a letter carrier happened to be walking in to deliver their mail when that happened. And that was good that happened. So there's some hero out there, but he didn't bring it up. That was on the 9th. So between the protests outside there, that APWU, I believe that's the union. There was protests all over the place on the week before, and even in Oregon, that was a big place. So there's been protests that the media was picking up on. So I believe right after that meeting.
Are these protests by whom? By postal carriers and postal employees or customers?
So the protests were by, the carriers and the clerks, if they were off duty, they showed up. There's union members that show up, union representatives, and also members that are standing in for people that did not leave work to attend. We have to keep the mail moving. So the media picks up on that. So DeJoy, of course, needs to make a response really quick. And it was all about the conditions of employment and what's going on. And so his response was, now who actually penned it? I'm not sure. He has someone named Ruiz, Ruiz, that does a lot of his press releases. So he might have put that out. And that was on that's the one I just referenced, May 12th, security, and just put in USPS and it'll come up.
Well, just as long as you send me the link later, we will put it in the description so viewers could access it. Our listeners could access it. It's
okay, great.
Okay. What about the precautions then? What precautions should the USPS customers take under the current state of the USPS?
Okay, so I was going to say something about metrics too, because that affects the statistics and everything. There's something called Six Sigma. And so I'm not sure if all these statistics, if they're using Six Sigma, usually that's a measuring in a factory, not anywhere where you have many variables, like with letter carriers out on the street, weather, even stepping in dog dew, and of course being robbed, and accidents, many things affect, there's many variables. So Six Sigma, I'm going to be looking into how that's involved with this too. It really doesn't belong in this situation. And like I said, Louis DeJoy, May 17th, those are that's the oversight committee he had to respond to regarding the conditions that the carriers are working under. And the postal force, there's the rest of the workforce. So being very cold, being very hot, the current vehicles, one registered 136 degrees. Just dog bites, of course. There's a carrier that she was 60 years old. Her daughter said that it's not that she was attacked by these 6 dogs, she was actually ripped apart. So I don't know why letter carriers are not one of the top 10 dangerous jobs in America. It used to be farmers were number one, and but I guess they're just counting accidents that result in death, not all these carriers that are being robbed and everything else. There's suicide happening. I replied to all about a letter carrier that was sent to a different city and state. Remember, I asked if I could work in these other offices when they gave our express mail, when the mail volume fell, and they gave our express mail to the other offices. I actually went to the office. They said our express mail went with the carriers. I said, I'll deliver all the other accountable mail. And I got away with it one day. And then I guess there's a grievance. Back then, we weren't allowed to move from office to office. I don't know when that changed. But this girl that hung herself in the back of her postal vehicle was new, a CCA, and sent to her a different city. And that's how they found her.
Well,
You don't really hear these stories.
they're required to agree to being transferred to another city, and then she got transferred, and there was too much stress, and she likely hanged herself.
We can't tell the reason why, but when you hang yourself, it's,
Yeah, but
It's-
is the situation that postal carriers, are they required to be able to transfer to other cities? Are they forced to
well,
transfer?
it's temporary assignments, and the union did agree that yes, you can start sending workforces to other areas, which makes sense. But back in my day, we were trained on a route. So the training even really went out the window.
Mhm. Yeah, it's hard to adapt to a new route if you just put in there without any training. Do you know if they get training when the transferees, when they get a new route? Are they trained now, or are they just thrown
They're
out?
just sent. They're on their own. When I worked, there was no GPS, and I'm horrible at directions. So just think of the mindset. And then all of a sudden you thought you had the day off. Your daughter's getting married and you can't go to the wedding. You're forced to work and you're being sent to a place, thankfully there's GPS, but
So the postal carriers just use GPS to guide them to the next address where they need to deliver, right?
well, I would love to see the new scanners. I know that there's GPS. They can tell where the
Yes.
GPS gives a geolocation of where the delivery scan is. So when you call into 1-800 and you didn't get your package, we just say, okay, we're going to prepare this report. It'll go to your local post office. They're the ones that have the geolocation on the packages. But there are brand new scanners out, and not brand new, but I haven't seen the new scanners. And then, of course, this is another concern. With all electric vehicles, that is costing us so much money. Why isn't the post office the last to go to all electric? I'm thinking if during that Buffalo blizzard, there was no documentation of any post office being closed. People would call us, we'd look it up. Oh, there's no closures. Meanwhile, we're finding out, and there's an investigation on why some employees, even one that's pregnant that was breastfeeding, she was stuck at they told her, no, you can't go home for 2 days, during this blizzard. Now, imagine driving an electric vehicle and you're a carrier and you're stranded with a frozen vehicle. And how is it going to thaw if it's frozen for the next few days? How are you going to keep warm? So I just think the post office could save a whole lot of money and keep our carriers safe to be hybrid. So you at least have some gas in there to get home out to the home base.
What precautions should the USPS customers take under the current state of the USPS?
So customers, so DeJoy was asked about hardship delivery. He didn't know what that was. So if you're elderly and you can't get to your mail or mailbox right after it's delivered, which you don't really know the exact time things are going to wind in there, because we're getting calls now where elderly are asking for this hardship delivery, which they would go to their doctor, get a doctor's note saying, they live alone. They have no way of walking down, 2 streets to the bank of mailboxes to get their mail, and it's getting stolen. So that is what I would recommend if you're in that situation. Now we're getting calls now And I thought it was odd that I'm like, well, you just mentioned your son. Oh, but he's at work. And that was fine before. You didn't need a hardship. But it's to the point where, because these criminals are competing for the contents, that they need to get it as soon as it's delivered.
What is hardship delivery? Does that mean that they don't have to pick it up? There's a special postal employee that will be designated to bring the package to the customer?
Yes. So that's what I'm suggesting for the customers to do. And if you're a carrier and you know somebody's in that situation, I mean, seriously, I answered calls where people were there, they took their last of their heart medication. So if you know seniors out there, and lots of veterans are calling in, lots of even green people, they don't have a vehicle. So they would have to rent an Uber or a taxi to go to the post office. I mean, this non-delivery is a big issue.
Mhm.
So
How extensive is non-delivery now? Do you have any figures?
no, the USPS OIG non-delivery report says that there are no statistics on the items that are not delivered due to weather, lack of staff, stolen, lost, dumped, burnt. There's no statistics on that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And were there the statistics before DeJoy? Do you know? Or never?
never.
Mhm.
And
And I think that I saw in one of the articles that there were millions of the arrow keys that were stolen. Is there any definite number, or is that a guess, an estimate?
1 million were stolen. I can't confirm that. How many were stolen over how many years? I mean,
Mhm.
how long have the blue collection boxes been around? Since I've been a carrier, so we don't know where is that coming from. I
Mhm.
did come across an interesting article that kind of says talks about package theft in general, and even mentions Amazon, that 70% are not going to, are not using that, where Amazon can get into your house type thing. But it kind of gives you, it's a website. I'll send you that link as well. But that had some. So the volume of packages and everything dropping because nobody trusts the post office, and they just had the National Postal Forum where DeJoy is asking for more business, but doesn't realize those same business people are getting called saying, "Oh, the priority package you sent me has no coverage. It was delivered correctly to the compromised mailbox, so the post office isn't going to insure it." So he doesn't realize, because he's ignored the humans, the customers, and the carriers. Any humans, he has no experience delivering to humans at the last mile. So he doesn't realize these same business people know what's going on, because then they go home and they're not getting their mail and packages.
Mm.
So I wanted to throw that in there. He's blaming the PRC for getting into his plans. But if you watch his wife talk about transparency, she's like, let us just do what we do. And then, don't ask us, let us do it and then show you. And that's what the DeJoy MO is.
This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. What is the PRC again?
What is that?
PRC? You mentioned the PRC.
Oh, Postal Regulatory Commission.
Okay, thank
They
you.
have to approve the any changes. Well, they have to approve the increases, but they're look at all the stuff that hasn't been done.
Mhm. What do you have any idea about what the budget is now for the Postal Service, and how so there aren't any figures about how that money is being spent, right? I think you mentioned that earlier.
Well, I haven't heard oversight ask for, very important questions. Have I dug into the financial? I don't believe any of the statistics that are out there. I'm the wrong person to ask.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. And as for the keys, a little background about that. After a key has been reported stolen, and then So is it replaced or is it just ignored? Like one of those arrow keys for the collection boxes or even the department keys.
Yeah, so back when I was a carrier and you put in an order, I heard they were in New York and they take, up to a year. And then a caller called in saying it could take 2 or 3 years. So that's basically in response. Well, no zip code, to my knowledge, has ever had a major overhaul where it's what you need is a new lock and a corresponding key. So those keys have always been duplicate. So crazy is doing the same thing, expecting change. So for DeJoy to have all these carriers still, while he was on board, it's like he's the last man standing with this whole situation. And he could have done something back in August 2020 and he didn't. Like I said, he's been ignoring the whole human aspect of delivery for the past 3 years. And that's what he was hired to do.
So in other words, you're almost saying that DeJoy is in a position to change the lock boxes and for a new key so that all those that have been compromised, all the stolen keys wouldn't work anymore, right?
Right, if he changes out the locks. He says he's going to do some other kind of electric key lock system. But my question is, who got awarded that contract? Because there's a whole big probe, into who's being awarded these contracts without a request for quote RFQ. I'm wondering where that's going to come from. Who made the keys to begin with in New York? I mean, is that a company he owns? I don't know. I'm in the, everything that I say, I don't create any news. I regurgitate it. And like I say, I'm a Google girl. I'll tell you where you can find things, but I haven't found the name of that company. And also hardening the blue collection boxes. I mean, if you look on YouTube, you'll just see people back up with a pickup truck and do whatever they can to just take the whole blue collection box. When I didn't know all the theft that was going on and they were taking the collection boxes out, I thought, why don't they just ask the carriers where they should be strategically placed, where there's 24-hour security, there's light. I mean, put webcams on these things. There's a Representative Lee just, requested why aren't there like cameras or webcams inside the facilities? And then I'm like, if there's any postal workforce that's getting hours cut, why don't you just make a list of things you could do? Answer the phone calls, security, since Postal Police have been taken off of patrol. If you drive, just say, make them look like there's no common sense. If you make a list of all these things that you could do, of course, not running into overtime, but things that you could do to help improve the post office. And if it's denied, it just doesn't make sense. So webcams, I'm thinking the webcams could be in high theft areas and the carriers that are missing hours can look at like a 4-part screen on all these different places. The carriers could even bill Department of Defense or Homeland Security or the
Well, anyway,
whoever's.
all this is not happening. There's no plan for this. This is just your
This is my
suggestion about
idea.
yes,
How to make
that's okay. Yeah, yes, of course. But if it's not happening, we don't want to confuse our listeners, and then they might think that it's happening. It's not.
No,
It's
but they can make it happen if they contact their representative. There's a lot of customers that are worried about the border. Imagine webcams at the border and how the carriers that, don't have any, what are they going to do with all the carriers when they make all these facilities, huge facilities with all these machines and robots? And what who's going to be looking over what's traveling through the machines to make sure? I mean, the fentanyl has increased since 2020. It's and if you look on that's the news. You'll find that again on YouTube. All of the fentanyl that's coming through the mail. We don't hear about that anymore. I heard the postal inspection was on it while Trump was in office, and I was very proud, saying, "Wow, we're not hearing about fentanyl. They must have cleaned it all up." But in the news, it's worse than ever. What's traveling through these machines, and who's going to keep an eye out on it if it's all robots?
when what about employees? What could they do? Is there anything that they could do to help themselves right now with the state of the USPS, or are they there's nothing that they could do?
Currently, I'm looking into, can an employee do a GoFundMe? And it's funny, as I'm researching that, someone went into the group saying, my friend's a rural carrier. She's exhausted or sick leave. She's going to be off for 8 more weeks. And she started a GoFundMe for her. So I'm wondering if individual carriers could do that. I really think.
Well,
Go
the
ahead.
thing is that what about employees? Do they have a helpline where they could address these concerns to talk with someone, and those concerns are recorded and ticketed so that they will be addressed, or there's nothing like that in place?
So the rural carriers have their own rural union. And I just learned that the rural union is, they're bipartisan. They don't, share any voting type things, but they are working on the issues, the rural carriers versus a union. So that's a whole other subject. I really don't understand their pay, because when I delivered mail, I was delivering mail where it was letters, and occasionally we'd get a Reader's Digest or a VHS video, and we would have it in our satchel. And then when eBay and Amazon started, it was crazy. Now, even with something like that, if it doesn't fit in the box, you're taking a few extra steps to make sure the VHS is hidden or this and that. And it's so different. Even I realized when I would be delivering mail and people call in going, oh, yes, my mail was taken back to the post office. Well, you have 10 days to pick it up, or else it goes back to the sender if you don't pick it up. And I say, how often do you check your mail? And if they say a week, I remember what it's like to roll everything up. You have it, you put it inside the mailbox, and then there's a week worth of mail. It's like delivering the mail twice to that address. You have to take everything out, make sure it all fits, puts it back in again. So just not picking up, if the customers picked up their mail every day, they wouldn't have so much theft. And, that's if they're still getting things delivered to their compromised mailbox. So to pick it up quickly. Now, one thing that I notice as far as, and our carriers are customers too. People are complaining that the checks being washed are wiping out their savings. So I go on to YouTube because I wanted to promote a really good tips for customers, how to have this from not happening. I came across, use a gel pen. But not one person suggested, don't put your life savings in your checking account. Keep your life savings in your savings account. So when customers call in, I go the extra mile. I'm like, well, when you called your bank about it, what'd they say? Did they tell you to change your account number? And they say no. And I go, if it was me, I would move to a credit union, something totally different. Because say you have a huge bank, and then all of a sudden you're getting all these texts and you don't know if it's for real or not. I would just change to a different, keep maybe your savings in there, but your checking account, and only have like 2 months of your bill payments in the checking account. That'll prevent your whole savings from I can't believe how well they wash these things, the checks, and they get processed.
Mhm. So the employees, there's virtually nothing that employees could do regarding the state of the USPS. And I think that I've seen that the USPS is hiring. So do they have are they hiring? Do you know?
So USPS is always hiring because it's like a revolving door. My background is human resource. I work for a computer company, Plessy Peripheral Systems in Irvine, and when I got on board, there was so much turnover. And during the exit interviews, a lot of people didn't know even what they were leaving for better benefits. I'm like, well, we have 100% hospital. What are you talking about? And they didn't know. So the post office is good, reminding, at least, I don't know about the newer workforce, but I get a statement every year showing what my benefits are worth. That's very good for, retaining people, but they don't even pass passed their probation. I just came across something as I'm researching, and there was a lawsuit where I guess a new employee had an accident or an injury and filed it, and they got, when you're with the post office, you could get fired for any reason during your first 90 days. We always heard if you get in an accident right away, you're gone. And so they fired this person, and I guess that was a wrongful termination, and that was just decided May 2023. But so customers, let's see, what was your last question? I'm thinking of tips still, because
employees, the hiring are. I see that you said that the turnover is very high, but there's still, the USPS is still hiring. They don't have enough workers.
Yeah, and that's because they're not paying. Back when I started, it was prestigious. It was a great job, great pay, great benefits. So yeah, that's one of the reasons. Plus, as I said, Peter Principal, you have supervisors. I mean, in this Facebook group, there's someone asking, every time someone gets disciplined in our office, our supervisor is smiling, and it's mind games when you're new. The supervisors, when I first heard the CCAs were coming, carrier assistants, I thought they were going to report to the carrier. So it would be a team, and they could only visit one, they would visit the residents together, I thought. But as an express carrier, I've approached an address where the regular carrier just delivered mail, and then another carrier came by with packages. So that's the only thing that Postmaster General is saying that makes sense. Yeah, just have one stop there. But that could easily be accommodated, especially because the Postal Police aren't out on patrol, if you had 2 people in each vehicle delivering to all the hardship addresses, all the elderly people that need their things.
CCA, what does CCA mean? Are they do they assist the carriers? What does CCA represent?
Well, CCA is City Carrier Assistant.
Okay.
And so, to give you an example, well, my friend said, I don't know if I told you, I volunteered during the holidays, and I ran the route. I was so fast, and I'd get back to the post office, and the supervisor was telling me I was great, but everybody else gave me the cold shoulder. I said, oh, that's stink eye. That's because there's an unspoken code. And this happened to me. I would get into the post office. I couldn't read the rest of the workforce. And finally somebody said, well, first of all, it's the same one that said, hey, why don't you look the part? And there's uniforms at the thrift shop. Why don't you buy a few uniforms? Remember when I said I wasn't sure if I was going to pass probation? So I wore those, and I did pass my probation. But the same person said, look, a lot of carriers like you, but you keep showing them up. You're doing the route quicker. So when it rains or they step in dog or whatever slows them down, you're running and doing it quicker. And it's like on a Saturday, like the mail volume was always lighter on a Saturday. So I was working on a Saturday, but so on a piece of paper, they would give you, I got to the point where I said, look, I'm slow casing. Let's use common sense here. Have somebody that knows the route case it. They case it because they know who moved, who didn't. Because when you're new, you're just going by address. You don't know if somebody actually moved. So there's many improvements. I started almost 29 years ago
going by case-up. What does case-up represent? Is it like a
casing? Casing is when the mail case could be a noun or a verb. So it's basically the workstation with all the slots.
Okay.
And so when you're new, they send you on, this is another stress relief, they send you on different routes every single day. It takes 30 times to learn a route. Well, maybe if you do it in a row, there's so many routes in the station, you're out there, it's like a scavenger hunt to beat the clock, right? You're like, I have to get back in time. When I started, you weren't supposed to be out there after dark. And of course, that's changed. We have carriers out there that 8, 9, even 10 o'clock. So another safety hazard.
Mhm. Yeah, I've seen that too. Okay, and you did mention that the KaRi Cole's case, the disappearance of the mail carrier in Chicago, that really didn't have anything to do with the state of the USPS. That was that's separate, right?
So Kiera Coles, Kierra Coles, I did come across that that was a while ago. And she was a postal carrier, and her boyfriend and the father of her baby was a postal carrier. And then there was another co-worker involved that had the same name, different spelling. Well, Kiera went missing, and they have her on video, but this was a day where they show video of someone coming out of her apartment complex that looks like her, but they also state that someone called her off of work that day. They called when I call in sick, it's like I'm like so nervous. You have to push all these buttons, make sure you're doing the correct thing, and it's pretty involved. So I wish the post office could at least look into it. It's probably too late now. What phone number was that entered from? Because did she call in or someone else? Either way, she didn't make it to work. So it really doesn't fall under the post office. I believe they are, they put out announcements if you have any tips. So I heard that the postal worker, the man, I forget his name, he moved to Louisiana right after she disappeared. So maybe if media is out there and they look into Kiera Coles in Louisiana, they might come across, that if the baby was born would be 4 or 5 years old by now. But I don't know what the background is.
So you said that KaRi Cole's someone that sounded like her called off that day that she disappeared.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They have her employee number as being, attached to a call out, and then her not going to work.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So I don't know who made that.
And do you know her record? Did she call off often, or you don't know that?
No, I don't know. The only thing I read, like through, sometimes when you watch a video or something, you get people commenting, and it sounded like maybe her family since she had a great job, they were bugging her for money. And that's the only thing I picked up. Did she voluntarily leave? Did they all three of them? Are they all three of them in Louisiana? Or, you guys had a whole bunch. Is that still going on? All the women that are being murdered in Chicago?
Yes.
That's
And what
still
about
going on?
yes,
Okay.
and the disappearances too. Yes.
Yeah.
For KaRi Coles, you said that there was another person that has her name but spelled differently. So the other person is also a postal employee.
Yeah, from what I read, there was it was three. I don't know how they all, whoever works in their post office would probably have more insight.
Got it. Mhm.
Yeah, and that's stressful too. When you work in a post office and there's exes working next to each other and divorced employees, I wish it was a lot easier to transfer. But you kind of have to find your own person that your own, person that wants to transfer. But that's sad. And then you have postal safety, of course. There was a recent shooting at a post office
Right.
that had, yeah.
You mentioned that the keys don't get replaced until a couple of years later. And so do they actually get replaced a couple of years later, or is that like the estimated time that it will get replaced? But is there you said that there's no control, right, for any of the keys? No, for those that are lost, and of course then not for the replaced keys either, if they get replaced.
Okay, so when I started, I reported those 2 zip codes and checked up on it 8 months later. I was told it takes a year, but recently I just heard, I think it's just the post office not saying everything, that it doesn't even matter if it's replaced because it's still compromised. But
You have to have, like you said, you have to have the entire lock replaced because replace key doesn't help. I thought that.
yeah, using the same. So do some post offices, since it doesn't have a cap on how many employees, I mean, how many keys an employee can order off of, I believe it's called, well, I don't know if it's just it's a website that you order them through electronically over the internet. So did some postmasters, or who can even do that? Can a carrier or clerk order them? Are there stacks of them at the post offices because they're being robbed so often? I would, that's probably happening.
And you
I
mentioned,
don't know how quickly, once you order it online, how long. It would probably a few days if
yeah,
they're
and
sending them
it's
out.
only, yeah, but it's a replacement key and it's for the same lock. So if that mailbox has been compromised, it's still compromised, even though if the carrier has a replacement key, it's still compromised because whoever stole it has a key that works as well, is what you're saying, right?
Exactly. So if I was a regular carrier, I probably would have brought this up, a decade ago if I was just happen to do the collection boxes. But how would I feel delivering to the same boxes I know that are going to get stolen? And it used to be overnight, but I think after 2020, I just started hearing and seeing all the increase of this. So
Mhm.
if your ID has been compromised, your identity theft, there's even one lady, oh, this is something else. All the additional addresses that are being added. Are they actually new addresses, or are they in addition to people keeping their home addresses? So UPS and FedEx will deliver their packages if it comes through the US. And then in addition, they're getting a PO box to have their mail being sent directly to the PO box. That's another tip I would give, is if your important mail is getting stolen. I mean, I'm at the point where I pay my bills over the phone. I call into the actual company and I don't do anything even online. These kids are calling in going, oh, I just pay with an app now. But I go, well, do you know that, yeah, I don't say names, but I go, some of these apps have been compromised as well. So it's just happening everywhere. So my advice, because this one lady, she said, my identity was stolen, so I got a PO box. I used it for 5 years. The next month after I started using my home address again, I closed out my PO box. My identity was stolen all over again. I've never had that happen. I have a public phone number out there, and I have an email, but there's like DeJoy. It doesn't look like he ever used his real birth date on Wikipedia. They don't know if he was, 1956 or 57 or whatever. But, I never used my real birth date. I made myself look a little older. So if you have things that don't correspond, like if you get your identity stolen, say you want to keep the email that you use. Don't use it. Use a brand new one that only you and your contacts know. But you want to keep that email just to look at the outgoing to see if they're using your email now. At least you'd be able to add that on any report. The reports, to call USPS.com, we just mark off theft. We don't really, I go in and I get all what is the back of the check say? I don't know if that actually gets looked at, but I'm very detailed in, when the money order is cashed or whatever, what does it say? So
What are we discussing? What are we discussing now about the theft of checks and money orders and how to secure them at a bank so that they're, and then email addresses. I assume that you're saying that email addresses are used as the usernames for accounts. Is that what we're discussing now?
well, it's your identity is like a piece of a puzzle. So like on checks, some people have their name, address, they may have their email, their phone numbers on there.
Mhm.
So when you're going to order your checks, maybe don't have the phone number on there, and don't have the email on there. When I paid my taxes, I actually used a money order because I don't want, if they steal my check, they're going to know what bank I'm with. So, and I did do paper. I sent it express, and yeah, So they were delivered on time. I'm glad about that. But you just have to really think through the information that you're giving out.
Earlier, you mentioned who is using Six Sigma. Six Sigma is actually like a management process in which every bit of the operation is try to is perfected if at all possible. So, what was the Six Sigma being used for?
That's just it. I know that there's programs where everyone's a Six Sigma green belt and they work themselves up to a black belt within the post office. So is it Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma? Is that just used for the machinery? I mean, it can't be used for uh, for something that's got so many variables. Getting the last mile of delivery, Six Sigma should not be used in any of those statistics. And like I said, I'm in the middle, I'm researching all these different things, so I don't have the answer. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, that's already very valuable. What about your most common complaint that you hear at your complaint line? What is the most common complaint?
Well, it used to be, during COVID and everything, we were short of staff. And so that was all understandable in 2020 and maybe first half, while COVID was active and our employees were getting sick and everything. But then the calls just started coming in, like I said, instead of making a report where we could help the customer, it was almost like recovery. I mean, I heard that all of, our place has been vandalized. The whole mailboxes, everything was open. Everything was, it's mostly just theft. It's theft and it's identity theft. And I don't feel like I'm helping the customer. I miss talking to, so I have excellent attendance and I'm a stellar agent was my last, I love my job. I love my boss. The call center really, I think the supervisors, the management at the call center could probably do an audit, if they're very hard workers and they're good. Now, being an agent, it's hard when you have to follow a script. But I happen to just ask an open-ended question, and then I find, we get a tracking number, and I'm like, I recognize that tracking number. I'll put in an area, and I'll go, there's 1,000 people looking for the same tracking number. So, I
You
go
mean
that,
like
whereas everybody else is like,
yeah, you mean a lot of people will have the same similar complaint?
Yeah, because people call in, they go, yeah, I got a text and it's to my phone number and it says it's about my package. The address isn't correct. And then so I'll ask, most agents just say, oh, that's not our tracking number. So call us back when you get a tracking number. And so I'll say, oh, what is it? And I'll look it up and I'll see, if it's not a brand new one, I could tell if other people have on their own. We used to do inquiries on every single tracking number and then it switched. Only do it once the tracking number comes up in our system. And so sometimes there'll be a tracking number and I'll go, just keep looking around. Maybe there's a 22-digit all number, tracking number. And then occasionally they'll find it. But these ones that are coming in their cell phones asks, so they go, well, I filled out. I go, what did you give them? Well, my address. I go, okay, did you give them your name? Yeah. And what about your email? Yes. So here they are. A phishing scammer is getting very important information. And of course, they have her phone number.
And how did the scammer reach the person again? Through a text?
Oh, yeah. You'll get a random text. Everybody's waiting on a package pretty much. So they always think instead of going to whatever company they ordered it from, they'll look at the text and click into it. And then some of them, I go, okay, so they have your name, your address, your phone number, obviously. They know you're a live person because you did click on there. And then you entered your email. So that's when I say, see all the different parts of the puzzle. You have to, now they, know that. So there's just so many scams. So a lot of them will even say, put in your credit card number and pay $3. Most of them are $3 and we'll re-deliver it. And then some of them, one of them put in the credit card number And then it's the credit card number. All of a sudden after that, something popped up like, oh, this is a scam. I go, but you don't even know if that is a true scam. They might be letting you think, oh, good, it didn't go through. I said, I would still change your credit card number.
Mhm.
Yeah. And even changing your credit, card numbers every so often isn't a bad thing either. You just call in like it's lost or stolen and get a new one. But getting it through the mail is the hard part. If you
Exactly.
have informed delivery, you could see what's coming to your mailbox. But like I said earlier,
Please,
so
please
can all the
define informed delivery for our listeners. I know you defined it to me last night, but please let our listeners know what is informed delivery.
So informed delivery is when you get, you can sign up to, it's free, and you get an email that shows you the pictures of the letters that should be coming to your mailbox, and it lists the tracking numbers of any packages. So all the previous people that signed up for informed delivery at your address, if they moved out and never did a change of address, they'll still be getting the emails. So this is why it's a big breach, because if you ask any agent that worked at the 800 number, we have like 4 call centers, and you'll find people that have worked during COVID. They got a lot of phone calls from people that say, oh, thinking they're calling the local office. Oh, can you hold my stimulus check at the post office? It's out for delivery today, but it's at my old address. And I would not just leave with, oh, if you don't live there, it'll be returned. I'll say, oh, well, did you do a change of address? And we find out no. And they moved. In those situations with the stimulus checks, I noticed they moved over a year ago. But we get calls where people they use eBay, they moved out, they updated all of their contacts, but they forgot about eBay, and they just happen to order something after not being on eBay for 5 years, and they get the emails still showing that it's going to their old address. So that's what so I tell people about it, but I ask them first, how long have you lived there? Has it been over 10 years? Is it a brand new address when you moved in? That's the best time to sign up. But if you're moving into a place, you could sign up. I mean, let's put it this way. Say your aunt moves in, your elderly aunt moves in, she doesn't even have a computer, and it's a retirement. There's so much high turnover in that apartment because it's retirement. People live and die. And so maybe she doesn't know anything about it, doesn't have a computer. There could be a criminal that's related to an elderly person that passed away, and they specifically keep it open so they could see the next person's name and where they bank and where the retirement's located and all that. So,
okay. Well, if listeners want to learn more about what you're discussing, where should they go?
oh, thank you. So, unemployeddejoy.com takes you to this specific YouTube page. My Facebook page is State of the USPS, and the Prime Spot, COM, without any dots. The Prime Spot, that's my Twitter handle. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Karen M. Nielsen. There's quite a few of us, but if you put in USPS, you should find all my information. I'm currently locked out, like I said, of LinkedIn, probably because this isn't what I normally look like. And this is to remind you that robots replacing the humans, and it's only after 3 years that DeJoy is even answering the Congress members. It's awful. But my phone number, 562-804-5625. Again, 562-804-5625. If you have any tips, feel free to leave them.
Okay. Thank you so much, KaRi, for discussing with WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM about the state of the United States Postal Service. Thank you.
Okay, disclaimer, I'm not speaking on behalf of the post office. I should have said that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.